The 80s Rewind Show podcast.
It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host,
Rob, the face for Radio Burgess.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, it's the 80s Rewind Show with me, Rob, the face for Radio Burgess. Welcome along to today's episode. How you doing? You doing okay? I've not been too well, but I'm not going to bog you down with it. I'm feeling better now. Just got the sweats. That's what I got. You know the stuff that's going around. I've got it again. I'm not going to name it. And shame it. Anyway, I've got the sweats, but I'm fine. I'm doing okay. So, an interesting email the other day from Rob from Living in the 80s, which is a podcast where him and his friends get together in America and they talk about 80s events and 80s things that happen. And they invited me onto the show. So I went on and I spoke about my childhood in the 80s and growing up in the 80s and music from the 80s. And it was great. It was great to be able to talk to America from your living room. You know, I said in the podcast, you know, when did you think you'd be able to chat to someone in their living room, in your living room, you know, in the 80s without doing a long distance satellite call? And, you know, it's like we're standing next to each other. It's fantastic. Rob's podcast is fantastic. So if you get a chance, check it out and I'll put some links in the description. And I'll be on there soon. Apparently he's going to release it. But I thought I'd release it from this end as well so you get to hear it. And I'm going to have Rob on the show really soon. So I keep talking about my email address, which is
The 80s Rewind Show at gmail.com.
And for those that missed it,
The 80s Rewind Show at gmail.com.
Well, I got my first email in. I've been plugging it and no one's emailed me, and somebody has. Janine, thank you, Janine. So Janine has emailed in and said, Robbie, what is your favourite song from the 80s? If you had to pick one, what would it be? Now, I didn't have to think about this long. It's Zoom by Fat Larry's band. I don't know what it is about that song. It's just amazing to me. And it's a song that has no edges, a bit like Unchained Melody. It's hard to describe. It's just perfect in every way. The melody's perfect, the sound is perfect, and it sounds kind of smoky when you listen to it. It sounds kind of warm like a blanket. And that's why I absolutely love that song. So, Janine, thank you for emailing in. Don't forget, like Janine, for the email, it's
The 80s Rewind Show at gmail.com.
So feel free and ask some questions if you want to, just like Janine. Love you, Janine, you're the best. Anyway, so we're going to get on to Living in the 80s, where I guested in the week with Rob. Okay, so let's get to it.
Live from Members Only Studios, welcome to Living in the 80s, the podcast we talk about anything and everything having to do with the 1980s, the best that we can remember it. So as you can tell, this is our British episode. And as you can also tell, my accent is crap. So I am going to leave that to the experts. Today, I've got a very special guest, Robbie Burgess, host of the 80s show podcast. We've got to know each other on Facebook and thought it would be great to do a joint collaboration thing here. So I'm looking forward to it. We've been chatting here for the last few minutes or so, kind of getting to know one another. He's a cool dude. You guys are going to like him. So, Robbie, welcome.
Hello, mate. You know what? It wasn't bad. It was very Dick Van Dyke, but it was pretty good, the English accent.
Trying to pull off the Mary Poppins thing, right?
It was very good. And it started off well and then it petered down. But it was great. Well done, buddy.
I think the effort kind of fell with it, too. You start off strong and you fade away. So it was the story of my life.
Dick Van Dyke's got a panic. He's got...
Right. So we're going to talk about lots of cool stuff about, you know, Robbie growing up in England, talk about his podcast. One of the things that's going to be super exciting is he's had some very notable special guests on his podcast, and we're going to talk about that and how all that magic happens on the other side of the pond there. So, but before we do that, it's customary around here, not just because you're on here, but we have a topic that we like to call 80s Rewind.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So this is where something within the last week, whether we've heard a song, saw a TV show, heard, you know, a movie or whatever, what 80s noteworthy thing drew your attention this week?
I suppose it's got to be the film Prey, isn't it? The new Predator movie. They're going on about that one.
I saw the thing on Amazon about it. It looks intriguing. So why would an 80s connoisseur like this movie? It's
going back to Predator a lot. I mean, they're going on about it being the best one of all now, which is junk. You know, you need a big Austrian man walking through the jungle to make it amazing.
Exactly.
It's nice that the Native Americans, you know, have a big central role in it. That's really, really lovely to have a bit of American culture in it in that sense. But, you know, you've got like an armed team in the original one with submachine guns, and then she, you know, fights him with a stick and does a lot better. And you think, you know, how does this work? As you know, and they throw the line, if it can bleed, we can kill it in it. And they kind of was just like, where should we put it in the film? I will stuff it in there. That'll do. And it doesn't actually make any sense when they say it. But I think just pure nostalgia will make you want to watch it. But it's not the best one. I don't care what anybody says. It's pretty good. You know, for me, it would go Predator 1, Predator 2, and then this one, and all the others can just fall away. But as an 80s person, I think you watch it hoping there's going to be a bit of nostalgia for the original. And literally that one line is pretty much it. They refer to Predator 2, funny enough, in it. They do return,
nice.
which I won't tell anybody in case they've not seen it. But if you know what it is, then you go, Predator 2. But they don't really acknowledge the first one. So I just watched it out of curiosity because they were raving about how good it was. And then I was like, okay, then it's got to be pretty good to top Arnie. And then, you know, you watch it and it's not, to be honest.
It was definitely, like I watched the trailer for it the other night and I thought, I'm going to have to do it. So it's in my queue of like 30 other things.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll move it up a little bit since it's got your seal of approval. So it's usually like if I see something and it looks okay, like I'll save it. But then if I have a conversation with a friend, a little more likely to go back and watch it. So
I mean, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. I thought it was okay, but I was also on my phone. It was one of them kind of films. I was doing it wasn't like I was just drawn into it, and you know, it was. I was sort of, and there was bits of it where you thought actually that refers to Predator 1, but they didn't go in that direction with it. They kind of just. I mean, I'm not going to give anything away too much, but there was a bit where this dog falls in some mud, and then the Predator can't see the dog. And you think, are they going to go down that road? And then they don't do it. And you're going, what? What's going on?
They found the one thing that can help them, and they just wash all the mud off themselves.
Yeah, you've got like one Native American story. There's only one thing they can do with it, and then they don't use it. You're like, what? It's crazy. It's crazy.
That's nuts. So for me, I guess the 80s thing that hit me the hardest this week was the passing of Olivia Newton-John.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, you know, we all knew her. Like I grew up with her. Like my parents were listening to country music in the early 70s, which is in the United States. That's where we first heard of her. She's doing her little mellow stuff that kind of crossed over to pop. And then, of course, when Grease happened, she became, you know, more of a household name. And, you know, I think everybody just sort of adored her. But the 80s, she certainly left her mark. Like when Physical hit, sort of like she sort of reinvented herself and carried enough momentum to, you know, the first half of the decade anyway, she was pretty much a force in music. So definitely missed. Very graceful lady. Yeah. And, you know, sad to see her go.
It's strange. I was I've never seen it, but I dug out the soundtrack to Xanadu the other week because I'm a vinyl collector, so I've got a load of vinyls, and I had a copy of it, so I put it on, and like you can tell the difference on both sides. When she comes on, she's amazing in it. But so for me personally in England, I only know her for three things really. It would be Grease, Xanadu, and Physical. So did she have a massive American career that we don't really acknowledge in England?
Well, you know, she did, because she was one of the unique people, I'd say, like Barbara Streisand-ish, where she could act and, you know, perform music as well. She had a pretty good following. Americans are very they tend to ride on any trend that comes through. Right. So whenever, like when the Grease thing happened, everybody was all about Grease, and then when Physical happened, everyone was all about Physical. When Xanadu happened, people were all about the soundtrack. No one here, the movie's crap. It's garbage. The effects,
I've never seen it.
Very dated. The story's weak. But that soundtrack, I mean, you know, we're 80s people here. The ELO songs on there were really cool.
I mean, what I love about Grease is they've got 30-year-olds that are trying to pretend to be 17.
Yeah. I had a conversation with somebody about that the other day. It's like Stockard Channing looks like she's ready to get her, you know, retirement benefits, and now she is playing this teenager. I just air quoted for those of you that can listen to us. And like Jeff Conway, who was in Taxi, like he plays like a 30-year-old guy there. We're led to believe he's going to be a teenager. So not sure how all that worked, but it did, and people loved it. I think it's because the soundtrack was so what's the word I'm looking for?
Is it like iconic or
iconic? Yes, thank you. I don't know, the simple words sometimes escape. That was mine today. It was very iconic soundtrack, so people just gravitated towards that. And as far as Olivia, everyone kind of adored her. She wasn't like Madonna level superstardom, but she was definitely people knew her, and she pretty much stayed away from controversy most of her life until the weird thing with her husband in the boat and whatever happened way back. I guess her husband faked his drowning. I can't remember what it was, but there was something weird like that. But, for the most part, people just, everyone liked Olivia here. So
have you heard the theory in Greece that Sandy was dead at the start of the movie? Have you heard this one?
No.
So, so the movie goes on, and I don't want to talk about Greece, sorry, but it's 70s.
No, you're fine. You're good.
So, the bit in the ocean waves where she's running around with Danny. So the argument was online is that Sandy actually died. She drowned. So that's why at the end of the movie, the car flies off, because it was all the last moments of her life.
You know what? I have heard that now that you say that.
Like playing out the rest.
Yeah, that was one of the fan theories. I'm like, does make sense.
It's so deep though, isn't it? I was like, what?
Yeah. Well, so if that's the theory, then, we see Danny as just, the boy next door that happens to have the greaser haircut. But in the end, he's kind of sort of morphed back into that person again. Yeah. So maybe that was him the whole time, and this whole bad boy image was part of the dream.
Yeah.
Mind blown.
We could do a podcast on that one next.
That's right. No, my fans, my fans. Yeah, as if I have fans. The audience would probably burn me at the stake if I started talking 70s too much.
Sorry,
get a little squirrely.
Sorry, that's my fault.
So we tend to again, Robbie. We may go off onto some rabbit trails here. No, it's just kind of what we do.
No problem. Cool.
So as long as you're okay with it, our conversation may talk about the price of chicken eventually.
That's fine. My mind is like Snapchat. It's there for a second, then it disappears, so it's fine.
Me too. I think we're kindred spirits. I really do.
We're both called Rob, so it must be the name.
I think it is. So, all right. We're going to take a quick break, acknowledge our sponsors, and then we will be right back, and we're going to make Robbie get back in the DeLorean, go back in time, and talk about growing up in England and
awesome
and in his life. So hang tight. We will be right back.
Hi, I'm Nick Hayward, and this is the 80s Rewind Show.
Welcome back to Living in the 80s. I have got Robbie Burgess here, and we are about to embark on a journey through Robbie's Snapchat memory. So hopefully, like if you're like me, things 40 years ago are very vivid in HD. Things that happened 5 minutes ago, it's grainy black and white, fading out. I don't know. It's crazy.
That's true. Yeah, it's exactly what I'm like. I'm terrible.
So we did a podcast with Marty McFly, Marty Weissman. We call him Marty McFly. Mm-hmm. And it was really funny. We did an Australian episode. So in Australia, I think they're 12 hours difference. So we did the podcast here. It was like Tuesday that I recorded it, but it was Wednesday his time.
Crazy.
So he's talking to us from the future.
That's true.
You are kind of doing today. You're 5 hours in the future. So you've already been to where we're going. Pretty sweet.
I mean, technically, when you go to sleep every night, you time travel because you wake up in a different time and place, don't you? So it's kind of...
Boom, I guess you do.
Yeah.
No recollection of what happened in the middle.
There you go.
I like it. I like it. So, Robbie, first of all, what I'm interested in, just because, and we talked before we started recording here, England's one of those places that's always fascinated me. Like from a kid, again, I didn't hear the Beatles until after they had already broken up. They broke up when I was 4 years old. So, with my parents listening to, 70s, 60s country music at that time, like I would have had no exposure. I didn't have any exposure to some of the really cool music until I was, a teenager. But talk to us, I'm sorry, about what, how does school work? Like what year did you start in, we call it elementary school, like the very beginning years of school, and then, becomes middle school, and then high school is our last thing before, we can go off to college or university or whatever. But talk to me about how that works over there.
So I was 4 in 1980 because I was born in 76. So I remember bits of, like yourselves, we have the 3 grades of school. So we have primary, senior and junior. I did that in reverse, sorry. It's junior, primary, senior. I remember bits of it. I remember, music's always been a thing in my life. Always music's a thing. And I remember I had to play an xylophone for school. And I was playing it when I was probably, what would I have been then, 6 or 7. And we had to do a concert and all that sort of stuff. And I remember the woman that was teaching us, she was about 90 at the time. And we had to sort of just play this song. And then for some reason, all I had to do was carry on playing when everyone else stopped, and I could not get that through my head. I remember she was so cross about it, and I was just like, but everybody else has stopped. Why would I not stop? So I suppose I was about 6 or 7 then, and she's going, no, you have to carry on. I was like, but you're playing the piano and I'm playing the xylophone. You won't even hear it, because I was playing the low end of the big xylophone. So even back then, I've always loved sound and frequencies, and I'm always Googling, weird internet radio shows that have gone strange and things like that. So I've always been fascinated by sound. So even back then, I knew when I was a kid, you're not going to hear it because it's too low in the frequencies. And I remember that. And then I kind of I've got a jumpy memory. So I remember bits. And then I remember the first time I started senior school when I was 12. I remember that because my dad was a musician. He was a country and western musician. And he played in a country band his entire life. He never went to America, funny enough. He never went to the States. So he was a drummer, and his lead guitar and singer, son, he went to the school I was going to. And I remember he met me the first day at the gates. Kids are kids. And he sort of said to his mates, this one's with me. Don't bully him, don't pick on him, as I'll knock you out, That kind of
not what you know, it's who you know, right?
Exactly that, yeah. And he's kind of he's with me. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I remember we went in, and it was cool. So I've only got bits of memories of school. School was all right. I kind of enjoyed school. What's interesting, getting older, is I've always had trouble with spelling, and I've always had trouble with numbers. It's like soup to me. If you said to me, what's 11 times 15, I cannot work that out. I cannot see it in my head or anything like that. And years later, I went to university when I was 27, and I got a degree when I was 30. And following that, it was only recently someone said to me, well, you're probably dyslexic, Robbie. So in school, I sort of was happier in the library reading all day. If they said to me, go and sit in the library and read books for 8 hours, I'd have gone, fine, it's fine with me. And I probably would have learned more. Because my reading average was always fine. It was great. My reading average is great. It's just when they said, you have spelling bees, don't you? And they go, you could say spell tomorrow. I can spell tomorrow, but I wouldn't know how to do it. You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. And it's, I don't think schools are right for some people. I really don't. I think there should be special places where if people just want to read books in libraries, they can, because that's where I would have gone,
It's a perfect utopia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like they say, a monkey can't breathe underwater and a fish can't climb a tree. So it's whatever your surroundings are should suit what someone's doing. But yeah, my school years were pretty good. I made a lot of friends. I had a great time, and I can still remember, it would have been 1994, September. I remember the last minute of my schooling, and I remember looking at the clock, and it was going round, and I remember once it gets to 4 o'clock, I've never got to do this again. It was one of those really crazy things. And his name was Mr. Kemp, who was our maths teacher, and I was sitting there thinking, I don't even know why I'm doing maths at the minute, because it doesn't matter in about a minute and a half. They set these tasks out, we're all doing it. We think,
what kind of teacher is going to make you keep working the last minute of your school career? You would think, you know what? He's been doing this for 12 years or whatever. Let's just let him coast the last hour.
It just reminds me of Pink Floyd, The Wall. You can't have your knee, all that sort of stuff. You've got to work to the last minute or you're a nobody. It's that kind of thing,
How can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat?
That's exactly what it's like. Keep them busy till 4 o'clock. They should have just sent us home, should have sent us home.
Yeah. But if I was your teacher, I would have. You've earned it. You're out. Peace.
That's it, yeah. But no, yeah, I mean, it was great. All I remember about the summers were like the 80s was it was always sunny. It seemed to always be sunny. I don't know if it's being a child or whatever, or having that.
Because we were walking on sunshine.
Exactly, yeah.
That was it.
I don't know if it's that sort of, rose tinted world, but it was always seems to be sunny, and it always seemed to be a lot of fun. But then again, I weren't paying bills. I didn't own a house. I didn't. All the stuff that gets you in the ass later on, it's that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah. So I'm looking at these because we're via Zoom here, the magic of technology, and I see these guitars on the wall behind you.
Yeah.
What's up with those?
Well, I used to be a drummer like my dad for a while, and then I stopped playing drums, and I just decided I wanted to play something else. Something to tinkle on. So I've got, I'm left-handed, so they're left-handed guitars. And then there's a piano behind me as well.
Okay. For
the people that can't see it though, but on the top right there's a special guitar, which is like a Hofner, which was bought in 1967 by my dad. And he had it for 40 years, and he had it on top of a wardrobe. So this was a lovely guitar. Paul McCartney had a Hofner, so I think that's why he bought it. And then one day he moved his cupboard and he dropped it and snapped the neck. So it's completely unplayable, but it's a lovely decoration, is what it is.
Good.
If people, sorry, go on.
I was gonna say any musical instrument to me would be a decoration because I can't. I love music, and I've got a photographic memory, like as far as when a song came out, what label it was on, all that kind of stuff. But to play it or sing it. I got nothing.
If people want to find out what it looks like, because we're just trying to describe it. If you imagine if people Google Stu Sutcliffe in Hamburg with the Beatles, with the bass he held, it's very similar to that. It looks very similar. Yeah.
Which looks upside down for us because it's on the opposite side.
That's it. Yeah. So, it's a very similar shape to that, and very sort of, it's got the air holes on it that look like an F and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I've got the piano as well. But I do a lot of, as well as doing the podcasting, I do some work with some amateur radio drama groups. So they basically come around the house, and then we record the audio dramas, and then I do all the sound effects and stuff. So I tend to use the guitars, like I've got an electric and acoustic there, really for sound effects a lot of the time. So if I need a creepy sound, I'll get the electric guitar, plug it in, drag a coin down one of the strings for argument's sake, and then put lots of echo and reverb, and then lower it by like 4 tones to give it a sort of drone kind of sound. So sometimes if you can't find a sound, it's better trying to make it yourself. So that's really what they're all about. It's just practical uses for me to make audio drama sound effects.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
So let's talk now about like what you did for fun when you were like in the 80s, because I know you said everything was sunny and sunshine and stuff, but like for here, like we might go cruising in our cars up and down different roads in smaller towns, or we'll go to the movies or go bowling or skating or something. What did you guys do, you and your friend group, what did you guys do for fun to like on your Friday, Saturday nights, that kind of thing?
I could do it in one word if you want. Breakdancing. That's what it was.
No way. Robbie, you were... See, look this. We're learning more and more.
I remember the dance break craze coming out. And then I remember you would literally go along skips out the front of houses to try and find kitchen lino, because that was the best thing that you could. I had a shell suit like everybody, and it was bright yellow like a banana. And I remember you would try and find the lino that didn't have like broken glass in it, so you could do backspins and things like that on it.
Nice. They would use my brother. I wasn't much of I was not a break dancer at all, but my brother and his friends thought they were.
Yeah.
And like the kids like in New York and stuff would get like big pieces of cardboard come from like a refrigerator box or something, and they would paint that looking fancy, and that's what they would do. And do you have any pictures? You got to post some pictures on our page or something of you in your banana uniform, because that would be epic.
I think I've got one. I've got one picture of me wearing it, and I've got hair now because I'm bald, but I've got hair in it as well. I bet if I said like which one, now. But I bet if I said which one's me in the lineup, I didn't tell you about the shell sheet, you wouldn't know which one. I look completely different.
Dude, here's what you have to do, because like we're recording this, it's Sunday afternoon here, Sunday evening there in the UK. Like you have to send me that picture before next week.
Okay.
Because I will put that as the the ad picture. Hey, click here to hear this week's podcast. I will use that picture.
Cool. Yeah. You might have to crop me some of my mates out, but yeah, definitely. But yeah,
we don't need them anyway. You're the real rock star.
Thanks, man. So it was mainly that. Then there was a lot of building ramps and jumping them with bikes, that kind of thing. So because I by the time we had cars, it was like the 90s for me. So but the tail end of it, there was a lot of like riding bikes and breakdancing and things like that. And then we went through a phase, me and my friends, of miming as a band. I remember this as well. So do you have Weetabix out there in America, the cereal? The breakfast cereal, Weetabix.
No, never heard of it.
So it's massive, isn't it? We still got it. It's massive. It's basically like, do you have Shreddies in America?
We have shredded wheat.
Okay. So it's the same thing.
Frosted shredded wheat, frosted mini wheats. I think probably sounds like about the same. Little chunks of wheat.
Right.
Probably about, 2 inches tall.
So
squares.
if you imagine one of those, but about, 4 inches long and 2 inches wide, that's what Weetabix was, and about an inch thick. So it's basically a massive shredded wheat. And then they had these characters that came out that were called Dunk and Milk and all that. Anyway, so every now and again they do these special offers and that come with the Weetabix. And there was a cassette tape, and I remember it was yellow. It was always yellow, bright yellow, and it had like 7 tracks on it. I think it was 7 or 8 tracks. And me and my friends decided to mime to those tracks all day, every day. And we even drew out a keyboard for my friend to play.
No kidding.
Yeah, on bits of card.
Do you have any video evidence of this?
Oh, no, fortunately, this is way before video and home videos and stuff like that. But, there was always a fight for the lead singer. There was always a fight for that. Female or non-female. There's always a row about who was the female. One of us was always, I was always happy being the bass player. I don't know why. I was always happy standing at the back, minding my own business. But I remember the tracks on it were Down Under by Men at Work. That was one of them. Shalimar Night to Remember and Gino by Dexys Midnight Runners. They were the 3 I really remember that are on it. I think they're the ones we just played the most, probably. We just kept skipping them back and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was breakdancing, jumping things on our bikes, or pretending to be a band. And that was our entertainment. We were,
sounds like fun.
I came from a town that was really poor, we had nothing. So if you can make a stick into a machine gun, that's what you did. It's that kind of thing.
Nice.
So,
So did you guys, I know once school is done here prior to graduation, we would have proms, Pretty in Pink. That was a,
yeah.
Did you guys have any kind of dances or anything like that at school, or was that ever any?
No, we didn't. I mean, funny enough, my girlfriend, she's 33, she's younger than me, and she had a prom. They have them now. But when we didn't, all we had was Roman Day, which was, we celebrated the Romans invading England once. I remember there was a party for that, and you had to dress up in a bedsheet as a toga and walk around and pretend to hit your mates with cardboard swords. So I remember that one, and I remember we had the royal wedding with Charles and Diana. That was one.
Oh, yes.
And they were the only 2 real big things that I remember being as an event in England. Oh, when Fergie got married, what was her name? Fergie, and she married somebody. Was that Prince Andrew?
Yeah.
That was another one, wasn't it? Yeah. So there was a few royal weddings, but in England, they don't really do proms. You kind of just... it's a bit of a confusing time from when I did it. I don't know if it's different now, but you kind of... Like I said, I remember the last minute, and then it bounced up to the 4 o'clock, and they were like, that's it, you're done. You don't have to come to school ever again. And you kind of go, yeah, with your mates, and we all signed each other's shirts, Okay. And then you have a chat, and then you sort of go home, and then you kind of go, now what? Now what do I do? I don't know what's next. They don't sort of say, when you do a test in school. I don't know if they have them in America where they go, when you leave, you'll probably be good at this kind of thing. Right. And mine said, I'll probably be good doing creative work or something in the arts. It was something like that. And I was like, in the town where we lived, it was like, there's nowhere to do that. But it's one of those really crazy things. Like when I lived where I lived 14 miles from central London, like literally 14 miles away. And I never went there. I never went to London. And then I live in Kent, near Canterbury. I'm 50 miles away. I'm always in London. So I had the perfect opportunity growing up to go to London to find the BBC. Like you listen to autobiographies or you see programs and they go, I wrote a letter to the BBC and they gave me a job and I started as a runner and I worked my way up and now I'm a TV presenter and all that kind of stuff. Or you go to Hollywood, you wait tables, you work for your acting chain. When we were around, they didn't give you any advice. They didn't say, look, you'd be really good at this. So why don't you write to this company and see, what they offer you. Even if you work for free for a couple of months, you might find that's what you want to do. There's none of that. They kind of just go, that's that. See ya. And then you kind of get a letter saying,
hey, you're going to be really good at this thing, so good luck with that. See ya.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it's like. And then, my mum said, do you want to go to college? And I was like, what's that then? So it's like more school. I was like, do you want me to go, Mum? She's like, well, if you wouldn't mind. I was like, okay. So then I went to college, and it was only really in college I got what you're doing the grades for, if that makes any sense. Because in school, it was kind of like me and my mates were just separated for about 2 hours at a time doing PE in our pants if you forgot your shorts and stuff like that, and then we'd hang out in the break time, and then you go for I've got to go and do this maths thing now, and then you would just hang out with your mates later on. So it seemed to me it was just breaking your day up between hanging out with your mates rather than you're supposed to be learning stuff for the future. There was no sort of no chain to it. But yeah, I mean, once I got to college, I really understood what things were about and why you were learning things. But yet again, it was the same thing when you left college. It was kind of like, okay, well, that's that done then. There was no sort of you might want to do this. I did drama in college and I really enjoyed that. That was really, really good. I had a teacher that was obsessed with Shakespeare. I can't stand Shakespeare. People are going to go mad. I think he's amazingly overrated. I think he's just dull and boring.
It's boring to me.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got this thing here locally. A friend of mine wanted me to go to with him the other night. It's like Shakespeare in the Park.
Right.
There's a park in a local park here, and they'll have this local community theater, and they'll do this thing, and I'm just like, that has zero appeal to me.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I just found it's pretentious rubbish. It's all sort of like, I love the Globe in London, all this sort of nonsense. You're like, yeah, it's all right. It's just it's just an old theatre, It's just, so, school, we didn't have proms. Going back to what you talked about, sorry, I went off on a tangent again.
You're good.
Yeah, we didn't have proms at all or anything like that. But like I say, my girlfriend, she's 33, she's younger than me, and they had a prom. It's one of those things where I don't understand what a prom is. Is it to basically lose your virginity? Is that what it's for?
According to the movies, it is.
Yeah.
So basically, the prom is something you look forward to. Again, I think Hollywood over romanticizes it a bit, but basically, we have different school dances throughout the year where people will sometimes dress up, depending on the dance. Sometimes they'll dress up, sometimes they won't. But the senior prom, the end of your last year of high school,
right?
Usually about a month before graduation, it's a formal event. We'll rent tuxedos. The girls will have nice evening gowns or whatever, which has evolved to, hey, let's get a limo. You go out to a nice dinner and then you go to the school or to some other facility.
Right.
And, and there's dancing. It's not, it's sort of like you've seen Pretty in Pink, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like that, but not quite as elaborate. That's like Hollywood version of prom. So
right.
It's more like Footloose.
Okay.
That's kind of more what our proms are like. So there's a little slow dancing, fast dancing, fights in the parking lot, throwing dirt at people. No, actually, that's not. But it's sort of like that here. But,
it's funny. My best friend, he's from New York. He's from New Jersey, and sometimes I'll text it. I'll watch a film, and I'll be like, "What does this mean?" Like Tribeca. I didn't know what that was. I was like, "What's a Tribeca?" And he has to explain it to me. Like, what does this mean? Like when I watch a film from the 80s or the 70s where they've used some colloquialism from back then that doesn't probably mean anything now.
So the last part about the growing up, the school experience and stuff like that. Class reunions, do you get together with old friends every few years and kind of reminisce or anything? They've
had them, but I've not gone. Only because I just think some things are better where they are. You know what I mean? And it's, I'm going to sound like a snob now, but I think unless you can brag about what you've done, there's no point.
Well, you know what? It's funny because I've got friends that hold that same viewpoint. I can see it. You know what? That was me back when. That's not even me now or whatever. On the other hand, there's the whole hey, these are people that, I haven't seen. I don't see all the time. It's kind of good to catch up to where they are because at one time they were part of my life.
Yeah.
But I've got my one friend, Kevin. He will, not Kevin that hosts a podcast with me, a different Kevin. He'll be like, I really don't care.
I agree with Kevin. The thing is, it's if you go and see people, you've got about 5 minutes of talking, and then after that, you're done. So what do you do for the rest of the evening? So I thought it's better. It was really sweet. They did there was this thing on Facebook years ago, and it was like an online survey of the class or something like that. and people voted whatever they want, and I got voted the most funniest. I remember that was very sweet of everybody, but it's like, but I thought I'm still not going. It hasn't changed anything, but you know,
Here's my last joke. I'm not going.
So yeah, but it's one of those things where you kind of just think, I don't know what benefit I would get from seeing people older, you know, and then, you know, sometimes it's better for people to remember how you were rather than how you are now. Yeah, I think
they died.
Sorry?
I remember how they were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, I'm probably more rounded out now. Now I'm 46 than I was when I was 16 years old. So, you know, it's one of the things where I understand who I am, what I'm doing, what I like and what I don't like. I've got no patience anymore. I've discovered that as I've got older. I don't care for things. If I don't want to do it, I don't, it's dead to me. I'm not interested. Whereas when I was 16, I do things to keep people happy. And I just don't know what a reunion would do. I mean, fortunately for me, some of my friends that I went to school with are still my friends. So, you know, they're around. But if it was like, you know, do you want to go and see, like, you know, your first girlfriend from high school, you'd be like, well, I don't know if I want to do that because I've got a memory of what she was like. And if I met her now, I might not like her. You kind of think.
Right. Or you might like her too much and you're really upset with you. It'd be a whole other can of worms.
Oh, I don't know. My girlfriend's lovely. So
you kind of sound like Kevin because he'll say, well, all the people that I've wanted to stay in touch with, I have.
Oh, no, I agree. I'm one of the people that I don't look backwards. So, you know, me and you are now friends as far as I'm concerned. So, you know, it's I'd rather move forward and make new friends than meet the old ones that were just there, you know, 30 odd years ago that don't mean anything anymore. I'd rather make new friends and expand the world. You know, like going back to the 80s, if this was 1985 now, would me and you be sitting in our rooms talking to each other via computer and looking at each other in the face? Of course not. It would be a mega expensive phone call. You know what I mean?
Sure would.
So that's why that's why I'm more interested in talking to new people and meeting new people and making new friends than, you know, the ones that fell away in the way. If someone wants to be your friend, they'll be there. If they're not, they disappear. And that's why I think, what's the point in a reunion, you know?
I like it. That's, you know, that is, that's very, I don't want to say insightful, but prophetic. No, not even that. It's good. It's good.
They should carve it on a toilet seat.
There we go. We'll do that. All right. So, thinking back to, you know, getting back to, you know, who you were in the 80s and so forth.
Yeah.
Like, what are there any like 80s era movies that still resonate with you today that you're a fan of?
Yeah. I mean, this is Spinal Tap. It's probably the greatest film ever made. To me,
it's pretty great.
It's brilliant. It's one of those things where I found it really funny as a kid, and then I grew up and became a musician and found it even funnier. So it does work on two levels. But I remember in England, like, you had videotapes and things were, you know, copied and burned and things like that. And my mum's friend, we used to go around and see her all the time, and she had 3 films. She had The Jerk, she had Blazing Saddles, she had and The Man with Two Brains. She had those 3 films. So whenever we went there, I'd watch those 3. And then Spinal Tap, I watched on my own. And then Naked Gun came along, an Aeroplane came along in my life. And then, you know, I never looked back. I just think Naked Gun, Leslie Nielsen was probably the greatest comedic actor of his time, and no one's really recognised him for it. I just think he's absolutely incredible in those. And then I like Fright Night, the horror movie. I think Fright Night's a brilliant film. And Batman 89 is the best one ever made as well. So a lot of stuff came along, and I was just enthralled in it. I know Blazing Saddles is a 70s movie, but it's just one of those things where, you know, like I was watching The Jerk when I was, you know, like 7 years old. And that American, it's really weird. Like I had an American comedy sensibility rather than an English one, because it was all American comedy films. It wasn't English ones because there wasn't any. You know, it was which really surprises me. Just like hearing you talk, because you're listing all these American films that we all know and love. Like The Jerk is like the least British humor type movie that you could probably come up with. It's just absurd, stupid stuff. It's brilliant. Like Steve Martin is still a genius, and just that's just funny. So there weren't a lot of British comedy. Like when I think of British comedy, the first thing that comes to mind is Monty Python. That's it. So we had the 2 Python films, which were in the 70s. And then you had a film called Clockwise with John Cleese in 1985. And then you've pretty much got nothing. You know, you've got nothing. So there was no British film. Oh, yeah, Time Bandits and stuff like that, and Brazil. But that was more surrealism rather than comedy. But again, with Steve Martin, he was a huge Python fan. So it's that synergy between the two again. But my favourite line, someone says to me, what's your favourite film line of all time? And I said it has to be in Man with Two Brains when they knock on the door and say, can I borrow your battering ram? And they say, we return it. I think that's just the most absurd stuff. That's like the best comedy line because it makes absolutely no sense at all. In that, it's perfect in that film and there's no reason for it to be there. That's why I think it's just genius. But yeah, I mean, like Naked Gun, all that really visual comedy is brilliant as well. And that's where America really took off when you had your aeroplanes and your Naked Guns because Python didn't go down that road and nobody in England really did. You know, they really, America took that and run with it and you did an amazing job with it. And then later on, you got the hot shots and stuff like that. It wasn't as good, to be fair, but you had your Naked Guns, your airplanes, Top Secret, which is just probably the best of all of those.
Really trying to milk that formula all they could to the point they saturated it after a while.
I mean, Top Secret, I think, is the best one. If you said to me at the Zucker Brothers, what's the best, Top Secret would be with, what's his name, Val Kilmer. That one, and that's got an English-American crossover, funny enough. But yeah, it was mainly American films that I watched a lot as a kid. Because like I say, there wasn't any English films, really. I mean, I'm really thinking, but I can't think of any English films that I would say Pink Panther, but they were in the 70s again, so they're not... Yeah, I mean, Peter Sellers being amazing as well. But yeah, there wasn't really any. There was no real... I mean, George Harrison formed Handmade Films, and then because he wanted to make Python. Then like I say, he brought out Time Bandits, and he bought, I think it was Goodbye, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. I think that was what it is. So there was a lot of dramas, but there wasn't any comedy. They were kind of frightened of it. I suppose if it failed, they were going to lose a lot of money. So they didn't. But yeah, it's all American films for me, always. And, those films I've listed are, they're just amazing. They're amazing. Spinal Tap you can put that on now and I will laugh like the first time I've seen it. It's just brilliant. And I've seen them live twice as well. I got to see them in concert. So
wow. Yeah. I heard they're doing a follow-up movie.
Oh, I can't wait. But,
I heard that recently.
It's just the Spinal Tap, if we could talk about that for 1 second, it's just the history that they created for it. And, even when they did so I saw them live at the Royal Albert Hall in 1992. And then they brought out the documentary again in the 90s that was following up from that. And they said they were from a place called Squatney. Now, that really does sound like an English town, I've got to be honest. And they went to a pub called the Queen's Lips. Now, all this stuff is really believable if you're English. Yeah. Because they get it so right.
I wondered, because being an American film, like I always kind of wonder, like, what do the Brits think of this?
Yeah. If you've seen that film and you're an English person and you get it, you have to get it. It's brilliant. It's just the work of pure genius. The background is pure genius. The acting's brilliant. I mean, their accents are amazing. You would even I couldn't tell they weren't. The only one that does it as well as them is it Gary Crewels, who's in the Princess's Bride.
Yes,
the blonde guy. Yeah, he's those actors like Harry Shearer, Mark McKean, and those guys and him are the only ones that can do the British accent so well you can't tell they're not English. They really, really, really get it.
So is Cary Yules not British?
No, he's born in California, I think.
No kidding.
Yeah, I'm sure he's Californian or something like that. Yeah, you might have to have a Google, but
because I don't. Do you guys have you ever seen the show Psych?
I've heard of it. I've not seen it though. Yeah.
So if you get a chance, you got to watch it. It's these two guys. They have this detective agency in California, and one of them portrays a psychic, but he really has photographic memory. Mm-hmm. And he's got all these people convinced he's a psychic. And Cary Yules was one of the criminals on there who had a recurring role because they just loved him. Yeah. And he probably did a half dozen or more episodes, but he always had that British accent. Yeah. So with that and Princess Bride, I just assumed he was British.
No, he's not. But the thing is, with the British accent, people tend overdo it too much, and you do get the Dick Van Dyke version of the accent. Where those guys are so subtle with it, you can never tell they're not English. They're amazing, absolutely amazing. But,
that's great. And I know they've always tried to do the accent like me. Oh, by the way, Cary Yules, born in Westminster.
What, London?
Yeah.
Oh, was he?
I guess he really is legit.
Oh, I thought he was American. Where did I read he was? Oh, Wikipedia or something.
Maybe somebody lied to you. I mean, Wikipedia's where I got this from, so maybe somebody could have
changed it. Yeah.
Sure. I've changed things on Wikipedia before. I've seen people mess up. I'm like, no, that's not how it happened. So, television shows.
Yeah.
Are there any 80s TV shows that you watched back in the day, or that, have resonated with you today that are noteworthy?
Yeah. And I'm not sure if it made it to the Young Ones. Did you have that in America?
Yeah, it was more of a cult following here, but yes.
I mean, that I've seen that so many times, I can't count. It's just that to me was just the best telly because it was so like originally when they made it, they basically, if they put music in it, they got a variety license, so they got more money for the show, which is why you got the bands in it. So
right.
you've got everything. You've got music, you've got comedy, you've got anarchy, you've got surrealism. And it's just, and everyone's been a student at some point, if you're at school or not. So It's one of those things where it was just so bizarre and irrelevant. It was just like bits in it were completely irrelevant on purpose. And that's the bit that you think, that is just pure genius. They tried to make it in America and it was called Oh No, Not Them Again, apparently. And they made one episode, but you can't get your hands on it. I'd love to see it. And they only kept Neil, who was the guy with the hippie, and they changed all the others. And I'd love to see the American version of that, and if it would have worked. I don't think it would, because it was so British. I don't think it would work very well.
Which is why I think it had the cult following that it did here.
Yeah.
Because British humor, even though, like, I get it, and a lot of people get it, it just kind of doesn't come across, it doesn't translate quite as much, which is why I think Monty Python's the same thing. Like, I find it funny, but not hilarious funny. Like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And people go, well, you just don't get British humor. What? I get it. I just don't find it very funny.
I mean,
but I'm sure the same would be said for the crude, irreverent American humor from.
Yeah, true. I was a big cartoon guy because obviously I was like, even now I watch cartoons, I don't care. But I was He-Man was a big one for me. I used to watch He-Man all the time. And I mean, Skeletor was probably the greatest TV villain ever. Who's never been recognised as a brilliant TV villain because he don't care about anything than killing He-Man and getting Castle Grayskull. That's literally his motivation. He doesn't have a change of heart. He doesn't care about anything. He just wants those two things, and that's it. And you've got to admire that determination from a man with no face. He just constantly he just didn't care.
He wakes up in the morning, stretches like, God, I'm going to kill He-Man today.
So, and I'm going to have that Castle Grayskull. And then what I remember in England, if anything was a bit too violent or racy, it was on late. But I remember I used to stay up till about 11:30 on a Friday night because school was done on a Friday. And I watched Tour of Duty, the Vietnam. That was on Friday nights, and that was really good. And like, my stepdad loved that, and I bought him a box set for Christmas 2 years ago, and he's just finished the marathon in that out. So it was a real mix of like anarchy, cartoons, and Vietnam. That's what I mainly remember at telly. We had a really good thing on telly around '87, Halloween. And it was called Ghostwatch. I don't know if you've ever heard of this one.
No.
And it was basically what they did was they didn't tell anybody. It was the first kind of live interactive TV program there was in England. And so it's Halloween, and it was on 9:00. And the idea was they were going to do a live ghost hunt at this supposed haunted house. So they go there and they set up the cameras. And in England, there was a haunting called the Enfield Haunting, where these two girls were getting thrown across the room, and there was all these noises. And I think it's what's it called? The Nun 2 based their story on it. It's one of those films like The Nun or Insidious based the story on it. Very similar. Anyway, so Ghostwatch was on, and we watched it at 9. And the idea was they were going around this house, and at one point you saw someone in the background, and people were genuinely phoning in going, "You've just missed that. There's someone in the background," and all this sort of stuff. And then at the end of it, it became so bizarre that they realised it was a hoax. And then I remember watching that in '87. So, I was probably 9 or 10, and I was absolutely terrified of it because I thought I'd seen a live ghost on telly. And then the next day it came out as it was like not a prank, but it was like live interactive telly, and they didn't tell anybody. And it was just absolutely amazing. And that and Live Aid are the two big telly events I do remember watching. I remember my mum had Live Aid on all day long. And I remember it was boiling hot, and the music was just pumping out all day. And I remember, because me and my mum, we were a single parent family. So obviously I lived with my mum. So I remember she had the music on all day, and she was dancing around in the living room in her masonette, and the sun was shining. It was really hot, and it was just a really good day. So I remember lots of music and being scared. They're the two main big things I remember about.
Lots of music and being scared.
Yeah, they're the
American humor that warped your mind.
That's right, yeah. Until the 90s, when we had a program called The Word that came out, and that was basically Anarchy Telly and L7. I don't remember the grunge band L7, and they did something on telly. I'm not going to tell you what that is. You can Google that one. But that was outrageous. But so I remember Live Aid being on. I've got a brief memory of my mum being upset when John Lennon was killed. I remember that. I remember she was really sad. I remember hearing Imagine all day. I know I was only 4 or 5, but I do remember hearing like John Lennon's voice a lot. And I remember my mum being really sad. So that must have been 80. I remember that as well. So
December 1980.
Yeah, so it's just, I mean, British telly has always been really good. It kind of evolved itself and it pushed the boundaries every single time. Like the same with Ghostwatch and various other programs, and it really, really pushed the boundaries. And it's good. It's good. I mean, I don't watch telly now. I don't know about yourself, but telly now is not what it was. And I just think you have a golden period of every part. You have music and you have telly and you have, film or whatever. And I think 80s telly was the golden peak of telly. I think there was so much stuff. I mean, being a kid, A-Team, Manimal, all these sorts of things were on that were just blew your mind when you were just, 10 and 11. And things MacGyver, things like The Equalizer, all these programs that were on that were just all American again, all American. There wasn't a lot of British telly. We in England in the 80s, we mainly had breakfast telly, as in like a Saturday morning show. And then the rest of it was sort of A-Team and bits and bobs like that. That was always on about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You'd have A-Team on, and then maybe MacGyver would be on after, and then you'd have a bit of Quantum Leap. And then you had Next Generation, Star Trek, that was always on as well. So in England, they would give you a good, 3 or 4 hours of stuff to watch. And I don't know if that was designed to keep the kids busy. I don't know if that was like, you sit and watch that and your parents can do what they want for 2 hours. It's that kind of
ratings are up because the parents are just done with the kids.
That's right, yeah.
I hear MacGyver's on. Go watch that.
And all that sort of stuff, What I love about 80s telly now is when you like, I went for this period about a year ago where I was finding all these things and rewatching them. So I got the 18 box set and stuff like that. And then, now I see the ramp, at the start in the intro when the van flips over, it hits a ramp hidden behind a really rubbish bush, and everybody got shot at and nobody died,
yeah. 75 bullets, nobody gets hit.
So, yeah. So it's amazing when you look back at it, you can see the magic, it kind of kills the magic and it kind of doesn't. Yet again, it's going back to the school reunion. It's the same thing to me if you go back and look at it. So maybe I shouldn't watch these programs now because it might kill it for me. I tell
you what's funny to me, and I still will watch it every time. I've got the box set of this one too. Is the 1966 Batman series?
Oh, fantastic! I've got that. It's fantastic.
Like when I started watching that, I was probably 7 or 8 years old. It had already gone through its run, but like it would be on, and then you'd have to the cliffhanger for the next night. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, Robin could really die. and it's now I look at it and just like, oh my gosh, this is hokey and cheesy, and my goodness, I love it as much as I did when I was a kid.
Do you remember the one where they tied him in the human knot? Do you remember that one? And it was like, Robin, if you wiggle your ears and I move my ankle, will I look? Garbage.
And you're thinking, they can really do that. And every gadget Batman needed, he had on him.
And shark repellent.
Need a bat shark repellent? I got it. I knew I was going to be in the ocean today, and I just figured I should be prepared. So yeah,
I'll tell you what was big at the end of the 80s and the start of the 90s was the Monkeys. They rerun the Monkeys over here, and that was that was really big.
So they had a resurgence here in '86 where they had a greatest hits album, and they had like 2 or 3 new songs on there, and that was then This Is Now became a hit. And they started on MTV. They started rerunning Monkeys episodes.
Yeah,
these teenagers, or even like I remember as a kid watching it. But it had a huge resurgence, which was really surprising to me because as a kid I loved them. Yeah, as a teenager I thought, oh yes, who I liked as a kid. Why are they suddenly popular now?
That's it. Yeah, I mean the Batman one for us was your 66 one. They run that in the morning. So you get up at 7 a.m. to go to school, and they put it on between 7:30 and 8. Mm-hmm. So every day you watch an episode, then you go to, as you walk into school, you meet your mates. You go, "Did you watch Batman this morning?" Like, yeah, what was that enough about? But I know what you mean. The exception to the rule is Columbo. If you watch Columbo now, Columbo's amazing still. Columbo's, that's the only exception to the rule. If you watch the 70s, 80s, whichever ones you want, they're still incredible. So, and Murder, She Wrote, that was big for us over here as well.
Really? That was always considered like an old person's show here.
That was a Saturday afternoon prime time for us. That was 6 o'clock.
It was like Sunday evening after like 60 Minutes kind of a show. 60 Minutes is a news show. Yeah. After that would be like Murder, She Wrote. And it's usually the older people would watch it. The young people just completely dismiss it. like, oh.
Was there ever one when it came on, you just switched it off? You didn't give it any time of day? Was there anything you just went, no, I'm not watching that? Even from...
Well, back then, the way the cable was set up, like, you had, you got like 60 channels or whatever in the 80s to choose from. And like, if like you can get like the show as it originally aired, but then they would go into syndication later where, they would also, not only would they be in prime time at like 8 o'clock, but you could see older like reruns, like, 4 or 5 o'clock on certain independent channels. So you could always find stuff like Friends. Like today, you can watch Friends anytime, night or day.
That's
on
right.
Some channel. It's on. So
I love it.
All right. So we're going to shift gears here just a bit.
Yeah.
And talk about my favorite part of the 80s was the music.
Cool.
Music, movies, it's all good. Love it, love reminiscing about it. Love talk about the hangouts, the proms and stuff. The music. So what kind of music were you into back then?
I was kind of out of step with everybody, I got to be honest. So remember I said I was a single parent family? Well, my dad used to pick me up at the weekends. So I'd be Monday to Friday being with my mum's, and then Friday night to Sunday night, Monday morning, I'd be with my dad. And he lived about 30 miles from where we were living. So he would pick me up, and every time he'd say, here's some cassettes. He always played cassettes. He was I'm a massive record collector like my dad is. It's probably his fault, to be fair. So he would go, and he'd put cassettes in. And I remember he had, I'll tell you it in a story. It's the easy way of doing it. So in school, we had to sit there and count cars. Do you ever do that where you go, how many blue cars go past in an hour and how many reds and all this sort of stuff? So I got 2 cassettes off my dad, which was his 2 favourites. But he played a lot of stuff, and these were the 2 favourites I got. So I was sitting there one day counting the cars, and they said, right, what have you got? I said, like 5 blues and blah, 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 whatever. So my mate said, I've got the new Kids on the Block album. Do you want to listen to it? So I said, no, I'm fine. I said, I've got my own stuff. And he said, what have you got? I said, I've got the best of Steely Dan and the best of the Kinks.
Nice.
So, this is probably...
I hear Steely Dan and the Kinks over New Kids on the Block any day of the week, too. So
this is probably 1988, 89, something like that, whenever the New Kids came out, 89, 90. And those were what I was listening to at the time. Steely Dan, who I'm still a massive fan of, seen live as well, and the Kinks' his greatest hits. So I was kind of out of step in the 80s of what was going on. But I did obviously get into Bon Jovi. I liked Poison as well. What they used to do in England, there was a magazine called Kerrang! I don't know if you get it in America, and it was a music magazine. But every so many months, they would release a video called Kerrang! 1, 2, 3, 4. Whatever. And what they would do, they would put the videos of the most popular artists on these, like a greatest hits thing. So every 6 months, you would watch these videos. And I remember watching Poison's video, a band called Halloween. I don't know if you remember them. They were on it. My friend was really heavily into Iron Maiden. So a lot of it for me, when I was around, his name was Garnet. So when I was around his house, he would play Iron Maiden records all the time. And I remember we walked to W.H. Smith's to get the album Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. It had just come out. I remember we walked there to pick it up with the amazing cover of Eddie, like this half droplet thing on the front. The artwork was always amazing for Iron Maiden. So really, I suppose it would be Steely Dan for me. It was that. And then I was a huge Queen fan. Okay. So what we had was a guy.
Isn't it kind of like a rule that if you live in England, like you have to be a Queen fan?
Now it is. So what happened was, I'll tell you about that as well. So what happened was you used to have these guys that would have vans, and they would come around with videos, and you would rent the video at the van. So he would go so instead of you going to a video shop, they would get it somewhere. They're probably bootlegs, and they would come around and go, you can have 4 films for $5, and you keep it for a week, and you come round a week later and pick it up. And I used to get the Queen's Greatest Hits video every single week. So in the end, my mum said, I'll buy it, because it was costing I think £4 a week, and it was only £10 to buy. So eventually she gave in and she bought it for me. And I played that video to death, and it's got, so the Greatest Hits album on video. Imagine that's what it is. And then, so talking about liking Queen. So I liked Queen then, and then I had a quick Queen poster. And I remember 91, Freddie died. We're going to jump forward a tiny bit. Freddie died. I remember that day at school, I got more crap that one day than I've ever had in my entire life. Because Freddie Mercury came out as HIV positive, and then he died the next day. So that was the timeline. So then I've gone into school the next day, and because everyone knew I liked Queen. It was one of the things where just people know what you like, don't they? When you're in school, they know what you like. So it's you and your fag music, and that gay boy, all this sort of stuff, you know. I got in a lot of fights that day. I'm a very calm person and I don't fight, but just people wanted to fight you for, you know, Freddie Mercury being gay. There was a lot of that going on that day. I remember that. So there was so I was a huge Queen fan. Anyway, ironically now, you know, you've fast forward 30 years. These people have grown up. You've got them on Facebook and it's like, you know, The Miracle by Queen. Oh, this is one of my favourite songs of all time. And it's like, you know, the irony of then and now. It's like, you know.
Not when you were 14, it wasn't.
So, yeah. So when you're 14, you know, you like Queen, you just got to be ready for a fight. And when you're older, now Queen now in England is an institution. You can't not like Queen. You're absolutely right.
It's almost like that here, and which is funny because growing up, it was like, you know, We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions were popular, you know, and Another One Bites the Dust. Like some of these things are coming out. So like they were respected and revered like by the rock and roll community, but like the normal top 40, whatever, it was just a few songs here and there. As time has gone on, like now it's like Queen's revered as gods or something. It's like, how did that happen? I mean,
Queen got really hurt by they did the I Want to Break Free video, didn't they? And they dressed up as in drag.
Oh yeah.
And then they were taking the pee out of a program in England, like Coronation Street, which is a soap opera. But apparently a lot of America didn't understand the humour. And it was like, oh, they're cross-dressing. I mean, this is the 80s. Everyone's different now. But, you know, the mindset then was you can't do that. So
there was the Van Halen Pretty Woman video the MTV would not air because there was a person dressed in drag in it.
Crazy.
Like, really? I never saw the big deal.
I mean, it's really strange. Like videos could come out. You had Frankie Says, like Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, which is a really extreme video when you watch it. And then you've got I Want to Break Free and stuff like that. But if you tried to play that on the radio in England, that got banned. My teacher accidentally banned George Michael one day. He worked for the BBC, and I Want Your Sex was coming out as a single, and a couple of people heard it and they said, "Oh, I don't like this. This is too racy." So he was in his office, just doing what he was doing, and the walker just said, "Sign this for me." So he went, "Okay," just signed it. Then it turned out he was one of the people that banned the single. So they didn't tell him what it was for. They just said, "I'll sign this." He went, "Okay," like because he was busy doing something, and he when you look at the banned people, his name was on it, and he said, "I love that record. I want to ban it." So
you dropped that day?
Yeah. So in England, MTV, you could play whichever video you liked, and like I mean, if you look at Duran Duran videos, they're really, really near the knuckle sometimes. You know, like is it Girls on Film where they're mud wrestling at the start and stuff like that?
That's the one.
So but I mean, in England, MTV, if you had MTV, you was rich in England. That's how it worked. You know, I never got MTV at all in my entire life. My friend Ross had it, so I used to have to go to his house to watch the videos. And so it's strange. Yeah, you could play whatever video you wanted on MTV in England, and that's fine. But if you tried to put a record like Relax on, that got banned, you know, and then I Want Your Sex instantly banned, you know what I mean, and things like that.
That's funny.
It's just ironic that, you know, Walk on the Wild Side by Lou Reed got under the radar completely.
Yeah. And what about Lola by the Kinks?
Again, but if you listen to Happy Talking by Captain Sensible, I don't know if you had that single over there. He was from The Damned. He actually says a swear word, a lady's part, beginning with C. He says that in the actual song, and it got through, and no one knew it until he spoke about it 2 years ago. And then when you do, honestly, when you hear the record now, you can't unhear it. He absolutely. So he was recording the single. They were doing the backing track. They said go to the pub for a little bit. So he's got absolutely plastered. Come back and sung the vocal, which is the one on the track. Swore in the middle 8 part, and no one picked up on it. And he said 2 years ago, he said no one's ever pulled me on it, and they still play it now. And no one's actually said we know he says the C word, and they still do it.
Which is funny because when you think about context. I Want Your Sex is about monogamy.
Yeah.
It's about, clean sex. You know, it's about, only one partner and being safe or whatever. That is, that's hilarious.
So if you want to know which bit it is, I'll give you a clue. It's the mid-late part where he says, see the little boys and the little girls. And he says, jolly baby, I'm a lucky C word. So if you hear the record now, you can't unhear it. And every time I've heard it now, since I found out on the radio, I can hear it every time. And it just makes me laugh.
Now it's in my brain forever.
it's an earworm. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. An earworm. Nice. So what is the first album you ever bought?
Oh, that's a difficult one. Oh, I suppose it would be
Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
First album as a music fan, not a little kid that just kind of found an album somewhere.
It would have been The Game by Queen, the 1980 album.
Okay.
Yeah,
That was a great one. Yes.
I remember
That is my favorite Queen album, by the way.
fantastic album. Yeah, actually, I'll rephrase that. So it would have been Wet Wet Wet's first album, popped in, sold out. But I bought it for my mum as a present.
Mm-hmm.
So I first got pocket money when I had enough to, like, went up from 25p to 50p or something. I saved up for like 7 months, and when I bought her a record as a present because she's my mum and she's amazing. And then,
you're a good son, aren't you?
Oh, I'll try. And then the first record I bought for me was The Game. So technically it was Wet Wet Wet, but it wasn't for me. So The Game was the one. I mean, that album is brilliant. If people haven't heard The Game by Queen, I mean, News of the World sometimes I think is the best, and then The Game.
Thinking of The Game, what's your favorite song on that album?
I like Rocket Prime Jive.
I like that one too.
Which is one of the songs. There's a really good podcast called Queen Pod, and they basically review all the albums from Queen, and they talk about live concerts and stuff like that. And that's the song they slated the most, and I think that's one of the better songs on it. I think
my favorite's Dragon Attack.
Yeah, Dragon Attack's really good.
I love it.
I just think, Don't Try Suicide's on there, which is a positive message.
Oh,
yeah.
Me and my friend used to sing that all the time.
Really?
Yeah, we just sit there and just snap your fingers and sing it. And I don't know why we did. I don't know why that memory come flooding back just then, but
that's nice. It's because we're talking about it. Yeah, it's a crime that John Deacon, the bass player, is basically a recluse now, because to talk to that guy would just be amazing.
Yeah,
he was just the most level-headed one out of all of them, as far as I'm concerned. And
he seemed like it. He's like you said, the bass player. He just kind of sits in the back, does his thing, clocks out, and goes home.
He's just his story. There was a great documentary. I don't know if you got it in America about Queen, and it was about 3 hours long, going through their life, and he didn't take part in it. It's a real shame, because you've got Freddie on tape, you've got Brian and Roger now, but to hear John's version of it would have been brilliant. But he gets seen in London at restaurants every now and again. But it's a shame. But yeah, I suppose The Game would be the first one that I remember. I went to John Menzies again, because that's what we had here in our town, and I bought I've still got it next door. I've still got the vinyl. I still got it. Yeah, and it's I was a great junk shop person. My mum and nan used to take me, because, like I said, we were poor, so they would take me to a place called Bernardo's, which was a children's charity. So you would buy bric-a-brac for nothing, And I remember there was always vinyls there. So I crooned a lot of vinyls, which I still have today, from those shops. And I've got a great love for charity and, giving things to charity shops and buying from charity shops. Before it became trendy, like it is now.
yes, now it's all the rage. So if you had to have one 80s album you could only listen to for the rest of your life, you could only listen to one album in the 80s only, from 1980 to 1989.
Yeah.
Which one would it be?
New Kids on the Block. No, I'm joking.
Thank goodness. I didn't want to have to edit.
Yet again, that's a really, really hard question, isn't it? There's so much stuff. So much stuff. I mean, it depends what genre I want to walk down. Could I have one from every genre, or is it just I got to be one record only?
You take a couple different genres. You can do 2 or 3 albums.
Okay. Queen's Greatest Hits, I think, would be the one. I think that's the one that I've got the most memories of playing. Like I say, it was Steely Dan's Greatest Hits. It was the Kinks, and then the Queen one. They're the 3 albums I remember I just played endlessly, over and over again. So, yeah. So the Steely Dan one I had come out in 78. That's the one with the white cover, and the Kinks one came out in 90. So I can't have any of those. So yeah, it would be Queen's Greatest Hits. I'll pick that one. I think that makes more sense for me to say.
Okay. Couple more questions before we move on to the last segment. So, are there any bands in England that maybe didn't hit big in the U.S. that you thought we should thought should have been bigger, and that maybe we should go back and listen to now? Did
the specials do very well for you?
They didn't. And so our MTV story, like the day MTV launched, it was only on a few cable systems in the U.S. I was fortunate that the cable company I had was playing it. So day one, I was watching MTV.
Yeah,
I had a paper route, so I deliver newspapers in the neighborhood, and then I got back for video number 2, which was Pat Benatar's "Hit Me with Your Best Shot."
Nice.
instead of I Miss Video Killed the Radio Star. But
fantastic.
Of course it looped. I saw it 1,000 times later. But what happened on MTV back then is you could read up on this. The MTV was trying to get their hands on as many music videos from as many record labels as they could.
Yeah.
Many record labels, like CBS, for example, would not give up their videos. Like they saw it as a fad, flash in a pan. They wanted MTV to pay them to show the videos.
Yeah.
Which they didn't have. Again, they figured out later that, hey, I've got this audience of teenagers seeing their favorite stars and buying the records. Like in Oklahoma, in the middle of America's Southwest, Duran Duran's Rio album was selling thousands of copies, and they couldn't figure out why it was selling so well there. And they figured out, it's one of the few markets at that time that had MTV.
Nice.
They were kind of figuring it out. But back to the thing, the Specials, they were one of those bands that were on early MTV because they were trying to get their hands on anything they could. Yeah. So yeah, I remember the Specials from back then. I liked them.
Because there's a really fascinating documentary about the Go-Go's. I don't know if you've seen it. Have
not, and I have been meaning to ever. It's been out for about a year or so now.
That's it. Yeah. So the Jane Wilden was seeing one of the Specials because they were on tour together, and Our Lips Are Sealed was written pretty much by both of them. So one of the Specials and one of the Go-Go's, and the Specials. They started their own label. Jeffrey Dahmer's, the keyboard player, started Two Tone, the record label, who then launched a massive ska-based bands in England. So, the Specials are definitely worth a look. Did you get Adam Ant in America?
Well, it's funny because when Adam and the Ants, again, I was a little offbeat myself because, prior to MTV, we're kind of exposed to top 40 radio, which pretty much was the hits, or you're listening to the rock station, which is the more rock and roll stuff.
Yeah.
And so I would buy Rolling Stone magazine, and Rolling Stone would have charts on there, and they'd have the British charts, and I'd see bands on there like Adam and the Ants, Bow Wow Wow, like the Specials, or Madness, or people like that. So I'm like, I would love to just hear what these guys, because we didn't have the internet, there was no outlet, there were no radio stations playing them. And when MTV was launched, we're now seeing these Adam and the Ants videos.
Yeah.
And then Adam Ant never really caught on here until the Friend or Foe album came out. And then Goody Two Shoes was a huge, massive hit here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, again, he faded out fast here, man. I know he had a decent, probably decade-long career.
Yeah.
We only got about a year or two where he had a decent impact here in the US.
It's interesting. Adam Ant, I loved him when I was a kid straight away, and I've still got the 7 inches next door, the singles, and even now I refer to some of the lyrics of his songs to when I decide to do something. So. I started the podcast and I'm in my 40s now, and I thought, am I going to do that or not? Is it going to work? What's the point? Like that you do when you doubt yourself. Right. And in the song Prince Charming, he says, ridicule is nothing to be scared of. And I've literally followed that mantra my entire life, that one sentence. I don't have any tattoos at all. I don't have tattoos. But if I did, I'd have that. Don't be afraid. Yeah, don't be afraid. Don't be scared to be laughed at if it doesn't work. And that was one of the reasons, I know we'll talk about it in a bit, but why my podcast happened, because that song gave me the confidence to do it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's funny you say that, because when I started seeing Adam and the Ants videos, I started buying the cassettes, and the Prince Charming cassette was one of my very favorites. And when you talk about lyrics, you said, I'm like, he's going to say ridicule is nothing to be scared of.
Yeah. And did you have Shakin' Stevens in America? I don't think you did you?
You know what? That is hilarious, because he had one charting hit here.
Yeah.
And it's escaping me which one it was.
Was it Green Door? Would it be Green Door? This Old House, maybe?
I cried just a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Song that hit here. It was not a huge hit. In fact, most people don't remember, but I do. But yeah, I was reading someplace where he was a huge star over there, just like Cliff Richard was never a big star here, but huge over there. But anyhow, I'm sorry. Back to Shakin' Stevens.
It's just, I mean, Shakin' Stevens is a weird phenomenon because he's he's a Welshman pretending to be an Elvis impersonator to a degree and singing an Elvis style. But he's great.
And going over well in England, but not in America where he was. Yeah, it's very weird. Yeah.
He's, he was massive when I was a kid, and I've got all the singles next. Funny enough, so my house that I'm in now, me and my girlfriend bought it 3 years ago this year. So we moved in, and this is pre-pandemic. I went down the town on my own to have a walk around. I found a charity shop. Like I said, I love charity shops. I went in, and there was I guess it's 4 foot by 2 foot poster of Shakin' Stevens that was signed at the bottom by Shaky. Yeah. So I brought it home. And I said, "Don't go mad, but I've got this." I just had to have it. And it was like $10. I could not walk past it.
Where are you going to hang that at exactly, Robbie?
I've no idea, and it's still in the cupboard upstairs. But in England, everyone was Shaky, crazy, and he did a lot of covers of American classics to a degree. He did like This Old House, but he wrote his own songs, and the ones he did write were really, really good. Like, you would not know the join, if you know what I mean. You wouldn't tell what he wrote and what he covered. He did them all very well, and he was huge. He's touring hopefully next year. I want to go and see him, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, Shaky's another one. I'd say if you've never seen Shakin' Stevens, just for the novelty value of an American looking at an Elvis wannabe, I suppose it's worth checking out. Yeah.
It was probably a year or so ago when I was actually saw that song, and I that's when I kind of found out he was huge in England.
Yeah.
I started kind of looking him up, like, okay, what's who is this guy? And I did find several songs on there. I was listening to a few that I liked.
Yeah, it's good.
That one hit is the one that I probably remember the most. But
it's really good. Yeah.
Okay, so the last music question I'll ask you,
sure,
is: are there any American acts that were huge in America that maybe didn't quite resonate with the British crowd that you kind of thought maybe should have?
That's a difficult one. Yeah, the thing is, we were so shut off, we didn't have access to what was. Do you mean like retrospectively now? What would be a good band? Jellyfish. They come out in the late 80s. Jellyfish were very good. And do you know Jellyfish?
Much unheard of here.
Oh, so Jellyfish were a band. If you can put the Beach Boys and the Beatles together, then that would be Jellyfish. So their last album came out in 89, I believe it was, and then it was 90 onward. If I got this wrong, I apologise, but I'm sure it was 80.
No. I've heard of them, but I couldn't tell you one song they sung. So maybe I have to look into them.
Joining a fan club is the big one. But amazingly, they're having this massive resurgence at the minute on YouTube and stuff like that. People are discovering them. And then they're kind of shooting up in the charts a bit from nowhere. Like, they're just, all of a sudden, everybody's talking about them. I mean, like, something hits the zeitgeist and they're gone. And they just travel and all that. American bands, though, I honestly don't know. I don't know what bands were around at the time that I would think were really, really good at the time. I might have to come back to you on that one. I've got to think about that one, I think.
Well, so one thing you brought up earlier, which was a little bit surprising, which I would have never thought, is you brought up Poison.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Poison then, yeah.
Were they big there?
They weren't big. You know what? You're right. I'll use that. I was forgetting Poison. So Poison were on those videos I told you about, the Kerrang videos. And then you had Look What the Cat Dragged In. The album come out
huge here.
Yeah.
I listening to that sounds very American, pretentious to me.
Yeah,
I would think the Brits would not get into. So,
but yeah, I mean, it's that. My friend listened to Iron Maiden, that kind of. So he was like, this band's, you might like these. They're very glam sort of thing, because it reminded me of the 70s stuff, or the.
Yeah, very much.
So yeah, I would say Poison. I mean, Poison could probably fill out a stadium, but not over so many nights. So I would take that as, you're right. I'd take Poison. I think Poison would be the one that I really liked. Oh, Vixen was another one. Vixen.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Vixen. I remember, is it Edge of a Lonely Heart? Is that their song?
Yeah.
I mean, that was on that video again. I remember thinking they're really good. But that's
easy on the eyes too.
They were. Yeah. And so that I would suppose those as well. Yeah, they was. But my friend, he was into like Black Flag and stuff like that. So lately, I've been listening to a lot of Black Flag, that sort of 80s punk stuff. I don't get it, but he loves it. I don't understand it, but he absolutely loves it. And I went to see The Residents recently. I went to see those. They're another punk band from the 80s. Yet again, I had a great time. I didn't get it, but he was loving it. So, yeah.
And you were there to support your friends.
I was, yeah, because he's from New York. He went to like CBGB's and he went to all these places. So he saw these punk bands and he's like, oh, they're touring. We've got to go and see them. I go, okay. And then, I just watch them and think, oh, they're okay. And who's the lot that did another really big band? I've listened to them now. Oh, gone at me head. They were on the Nirvana Unplugged album, Meat Puppets. Meat Puppets.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've listened to them quite a lot lately. They're another band that were never big until Nirvana made them big.
Yeah.
They're another great band that have got some really interesting albums. But like I say, in England, you never really heard of those until Nirvana mentioned it. But that was in the 90s they got mentioned. So it was, nearly a decade previous they had the first album out. So it's, yeah.
Cool. All right. So we're going to take one more brief break and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk all about your podcast. What can we expect? So hang tight. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Jack Hughes from Wang Chung. This is the 80s Rewind podcast.
Welcome back to Living in the 80s. This is our last segment here. And again, I've got Robbie Burgess with me here. And Robbie, I want to give you the chance now to talk about your podcast because, part of one of the reasons that we wanted to do this today was to really help expand your audience. So,
cool.
People that may not know who you are or what the podcast is about, you're going to get a chance to let them know what to expect. I know you've had some very special guests that have been very cool. So talk to, pretend I've never heard of your podcast before, never listened to it, don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
What would a listener expect if they tuned in?
Well, shall I tell you how I got into it?
Yes, please start from the beginning.
Okay, I'll tell you I got into it because it makes more sense, I think. It's a bit of a linear story. So I was working part-time for some radio stations on and off, doing bits and bobs, and I was doing 80 shows on all of them. And then, unfortunately, my dad got really ill when he was dying. So I went and saw my dad, and I was like, Dad, I'm fed up. I'm doing all these shows. He said, well, you know what you got to do? You got to start your own radio station. So I went, all right, then. So as you do, I went off and started a radio station with my friend, and I was doing the 80s show on that. And then I just got an email out of the blue from, should I name the artist or not? I don't know if I should name them. Oh, anyway, an artist emailed me and just said, oh, by the way, I've got a new single coming out. Would you like to talk to me? So I was like, yeah, okay, cool. So I did, I emailed the person and we got the dialogue going and I interviewed this artist and it went really well. And I never...
Wait, hold on a second. We love name dropping around here.
Oh, okay.
So feel free to plug any artist or song or whatever you want to.
Okay. So it was Charlene Oliver who had a hit with Never Been to Me. And she emailed me and said, I've got a new single coming out. Would you like to talk to me? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So...
Wait. Charlene, the one that has the song about sleeping with the kings and the whole thing.
I think that's the one. Yeah.
Charlene.
It goes, hey lady. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, we voted that as the worst song of all time on Living in the
Oh, really? Been to Georgia and California. That one.
Oh, yeah. So hold on. Wait. Mind blown. So Charlene reached out to you about interviewing her on your show.
Yeah.
So some of our listeners are looking right now and they're laughing and guaranteed. I know Kevin, not the Kevin talked about before, Kevin Ackley, who does a podcast. I guarantee he is texting me right this second as he's listening to this. This is hilarious. So I'm sorry. Continue.
Okay. I mean, you might not like the record, but she's the loveliest person in the world. She was absolutely lovely. So we basically, like we're doing now, we Zoomed and I interviewed Charlene and it went really, really well. Now, podcasting is one of those things that was always around and I knew about it since it started. I knew people did them and I had no interest in it whatsoever because I was doing radio stuff and bits and bobs on that. And I interviewed Charlene and I played it out. And then I got an email from somebody saying, I really like your interview. That was really great. Have you got any more? So I was like, actually, no, I didn't think about it. It was one of those things where I just did one. And I thought, that's nice. That's an added bonus for the show. And then I just switched off from it. And then a few mates of mine said, I really like that. You should do some more. So I was like, okay, then. So I thought, right, if I'm going to do a podcast, what is it going to be about? Because there's people talking about it and there's people talking 80s movies. And so I want to do something completely unique, but a little bit different. So I thought, well, I interviewed Charlene Oliver, who's a musician in the 80s. So why don't I talk to 80s musicians? Like, just find out about, So my experience of the 80s was, like I said, it was all sunshine and stuff like that. But like I said, we were really poor, me and my mum. So my mum had, how can you put it? The 80s wasn't terrible for my mum, but she didn't enjoy it either. It wasn't all plain sailing. It was, we got electricity cut off and bits and bobs like that. And so she had a great time and a terrible time. I had a wonderful time in the 80s, and that's all I remember. So I thought, I wonder what a musician's version of that was like. Was it all sunshine and roses? So I've just thought I'd do another interview. And I thought, right, so I'm going to do a podcast. I want to talk to 80s musicians about their careers, good or bad, whether they had a hit, whether they didn't have a hit, whether they had a one-hit wonder, or whether they were successful. I just thought I'd try and talk to the people that did it. So the show is mainly me talking to musicians from the 80s about their albums and their singles and their experiences. And like anything, you talk to, like Charlene Oliver, we talked to Charlene, and she recorded a song with Stevie Wonder. So it's...
No way.
Yeah, she did.
Wow.
Yeah.
No idea.
So she recorded a song with Stevie Wonder, which I think it got banned because the lyrics were too racy. They were a bit near the knuckle. It was innocent lyrics, but they decided it was... too near the knuckle, so they banned the record. And it's things like that, like people just go to me, would go to Charlene, tell me about your biggest hit. Right, thank you very much. Let's move on. Whereas, I said to, what's the weirdest collaboration you had? Oh, Stevie Wonder. And then you've opened a new door and she gets to talk about something new for a change,
Oh, cool.
and stuff like that. So to me, I'm really interested in, there's things that you could talk about. Like I interviewed a guy called Owen Paul who had a hit with You're My Favourite Waste of Time. Which was it was technically a one-hit wonder in England. I don't know if it got anywhere in the States, but anyway. So back on the telly in the 80s, they used to mime to the records a lot. They would play the record, they would mime and do the bit, sing
like
along.
Milli Vanilli.
Yeah. And then he was famously on a show called Pebble Mill, which was a daytime TV show, and he was doing the single. And I don't know whether his monitors went down or he couldn't hear it, but the record started and he just sat there staring with a guitar. And eventually his mate realised he was playing the other guitar and started miming, so he carried on. So there's footage of this all over the place, like the most embarrassing TV things and da-da-da-da-da. And when I interviewed him, I decided I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not interested in a mistake. You know what I mean? I want to know about you hearing that single. So that was a one-hit wonder for him in England. But originally, Bette Midler did it on a live video, which is where he heard it. Mm-hmm. So it's things like that. I don't want to embarrass people I'm talking to. I want to generally find out about the record, where it came from, was it easy to record and stuff like that. And you find, I'm not here to dig dirt on people, and I don't want to talk about embarrassing things. I'm not interested in that, And I've seen this gentleman, Owen, interviewed a few times, and people bring that up, and I just think you don't need to talk about that. It's his music that's important. That's what makes the man who he is and why you're talking to him. You don't need to talk about him.
Not only that, but it's already been talked about.
Yeah,
okay,
it is.
And move on. Kind of like class reunions. It's in the past.
So and he's got a fantastic sense of humour about it. He really has. But I thought, I don't want to be that guy that brings that rubbish up because it's not important. The reason people are all talking to him are about his record, and that's what I want to know about. Their personal lives don't come into it for me at all. If they had a drug problem or something and they bring it in and say, around the time I had really bad drugs, I didn't really stand 5 years. Fine, if you want to talk about that, that's fine. You won't get that from my podcast. You'll get me asking about their career, their records, and their albums, and what they're doing next. And it's amazing that how lovely the people are from the 80s in general. The artists. Do you want me to tell you about how I get the guests, or do you want me to go in a bit about the history?
Yes, please do. I'm very interested in hearing how this happens.
So, literally, for anyone that's to start the same podcast as me, here's how I do it. I find their website online and I email them, and that's it. That's all I've done.
Huh.
And then generally they'll either say yeah or no, and then you can just set up a date, a Zoom date, and then that's it. And that's all I've done. I've done nothing special. I don't know anybody in the music industry. I'm not connected to anybody. I've just emailed them, and then fortunately my first email lands, and if it doesn't, I'll email them a week later and say, can I talk to you still? By the way, I'm still here. I'm not gone. Generally on the second emails, you get a response from people. And
then they know you're a little more serious.
Yeah, and also they get so much traffic probably that you disappear in their email lists, and then the week later you bounce to the top again, and they remember you're there. But there's two.
What's going to happen now, don't you? People that listen to my podcast are all the time are going to start texting, emailing me like, "Hey, you need to get John Bon Jovi on the podcast next week."
Yeah.
we want to hear Madonna or Cyndi Lauper. Like, okay, yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you have to know where you're aiming at. You know, there's different. I mean, we'll talk off mic about like the differences, because it's not fair to name and shame people on here. But there's different people, you know, that you might be able to get. In England, in particular, I've noticed there's different categories of 80s artists, and if you know roughly where you can aim, you're more likely to get an interview. Sure. And everybody I've spoke to has been very, very lovely. Like, there's a running joke. My friend listens to my podcast, and he says, every episode you say he's a lovely, lovely guy. And it's like, because he was a lovely, lovely guy. And he said, you got to stop saying that sentence. So if anybody goes back and finds the 80s Rewind Show podcast, every episode you're going to be going, he's a lovely, lovely guy. Because they generally were really nice. There's two kind of interviews I've discovered. There's Q&A interviews where I'll talk to, say, you, Rob, and you'll talk to me. And then there's ones where they will talk at you for 2 hours. You know, there's two kind of interviews. There was one artist, I'm not going to name names on this one because it's not fair, but I had a line of, so we started the Zoom chat, and he came on, and I was like, hello. And he said, I've just done a brilliant interview with Radio 1, by the way. So that's how it started. So it started with him telling me he's already done a brilliant interview. So you're like, okay, right then. And then I had basically, like, I research everybody I interview. I don't wing an interview like yourself. I do my background, and I'll listen to, so if I spoke to Dennis Seaton from Musical Youth, who did Pass the Dutchie last week, I think it was. So for the fortnight before, I listened to Musical Youth's albums, all the singles I could find related to it, and then their history online, as much as I could learn about them. And then from that, I decide what I want to talk about. Like, I can give you an instance of, again, Musical Youth. So you had the five lads, and then when the band broke up, one of them ended up being killed, I think it was, and one of them ended up in a mental institution. Unfortunately, he died 2 days ago, funny enough. He died 2 days ago.
I did not know this.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I had all that background there, and I ignored those facts. It was like, right, you talk to me about Musical Youth, you know what I mean, and your single and how it affected your life. You know, and it's that sort of thing. So anyway, going back to what I was talking about, I'd written out 30 questions for this person, because I'm not going to name this person, but he had a massive career and he'd done a lot of stuff, and he was in the right places at the right time in the 80s. And he decided to talk at me for 2 hours. And it was like, so tell me when you did this.
Questions out the window.
Yeah, it was pretty much
from my research.
It was, yeah. And it was like, so tell me about when you released this single. And then he decided to talk about what his favourite restaurant was to eat at in the 80s. And it was like, no matter what I said to this person, he wasn't going to talk 80s or anything, you know. And it comes to the point of, you know, do you bin the interview or do you put it out? And I did put it out. And if people go back and hear the catalogue, you can decide which person I'm talking about. That's only fair, I think, to say. But yeah, it's amazing. So
very gracious.
Oh, well, thank you. But it's amazing. You know, like I say, I started the podcast as an idea and a project. It's now become something I love doing, and I really enjoy doing it. And like you very kindly guested me on your show, I love talking to you and doing things. And I didn't realise how much I really was going to enjoy it. I just thought it's just a thing. You know, like I thought, that's a thing. I'll do that. And then now I've got my feet under it, and I've got 7 or 8 episodes out, and I'm speaking to many different people. I'm really, really loving it. And it's the difference of all these people that I really enjoy. Like Dennis Seaton, is from a reggae background, if you like. Charlene's from a Midwest background, and it's just the backgrounds of everybody being different and ending up in the same area, like having a song in the 80s and how they got there. I spoke to, the last one I released at the time of this recording was Simon Napier Bell. And I don't know if that name rings any bells, but he was the manager for Wham, Japan and the Yardbirds for many years. So it's nice as well to talk to somebody that was involved in the 80s but wasn't directly releasing records and bits and bobs like that. And his interview was very interesting, just from a fan point of view. Some of the stuff I found out, talking about producing the Yardbirds and Jimmy Page, and and he also wrote the English lyrics for the song "You Don't Have to Say You Love Me" by Dusty Springfield as well. Okay. So he had such a varied career. You have the opposite, where you have tried to cram too much into an hour. It goes in reverse as well. But I love the podcast, and I love talking to people from the 80s, and I love just meeting new people online. It's always the same. The minute before I go on, I'm absolutely bricking it. And the minute after I've been on, I'm fine talking to them. It's like talking to old friends because they're so friendly and they're so lovely. they're just great. They're really, really great. And it's, you know, it's unfortunate sometimes I forget, be it you have an hour with these people because they're generally busy. You know, I do forget. And I have a list of questions and I've only asked the first 5 because the other 5 were, you know, in the next half an hour when I've hit that hour marker and they've got to go because they've got somebody else to talk to. So, you know, I just get so into it. I enjoy it so much. I forget what I'm doing sometimes. But yeah, it is fun. It's great.
I just hope that sometime after this podcast, when you're talking about me, you refer to me as lovely as well. Because if not, I want to be offended.
Oh, I will. Don't worry.
Okay, I appreciate it. You're awesome. All right. I think that kind of covers it. Just one more time. Tell us where we can find the podcast.
Okay.
Name it as it should be.
So it's the 80s Rewind Show podcast, and it's on all the sites. It's on Stitcher. It's on Amazon. It's on Apple Podcasts.
Spotify, maybe.
It's on Spotify. Yeah, it's on Audible. I do actually put the YouTube videos up of the interviews, but I don't show the footage. It's just like a picture with the audio. So if you prefer it on YouTube, it's on there as well. I've been lucky. So far, I spoke to Nick Haywood from Haircut 100. He was lovely. I'm doing it again.
Cool.
I'm doing it again.
Yeah.
Doing it again. I spoke to Rusty Egan, who was in Visage, Dennis Seaton from Musical Youth, Charlene, obviously, and Jack. Oh, can I go back for 1 second? Is that all right?
Oh, yeah. No, go. You're good.
So I spoke to Jack Hughes from Wang Chung.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love Wang Chung.
So I emailed Jack.
Now, is he the blonde-haired lead singer or is he the other guy?
He's right. Yeah, he's the blonde. He's the blonde guy.
Gotcha. Okay, just making sure.
And so it was one of those things where he was my second interview, right? So I set up the interview and I said, because a guy I know who runs my local record shop where I buy a lot of vinyl, I've just said I'm doing this thing. He said, oh, I think Jack Hughes lives around here. Why don't you Google him and find out? So I Googled Jack, found him through the website. I emailed Jack and just sent an email saying, hey, Jack, can I come and see you and interview? And he was like, yeah, sure. He said, come over to the house. And I was like, what? He's like,
wow.
And he's like, yeah, it turns out he's about 10 miles from me. And he's like, yeah, come over to the house and have a chat. So Wang Chung were one of those bands where I think they were big in America, but not very big in England. You know,
Really?
And I don't think he'll mind me saying that. I think they were bigger in the States. And so I've gone to Jack's house, which was lovely. And he's got gold discs on the wall and he's a huge Beatles fan. And we're talking about the Beatles for ages. And then, so he made me a lovely cup of tea and I set the mics up in his kitchen and we did the interview. And he could not have been a nicer person. You know, I mean, he did not know me and I didn't know him. And he just invited me around his house. We had a cup of tea. The interview was really, really great. And he was talking about touring with the Cars because they toured with the Cars for a bit. And then William Friedkin, who did the Exorcist movies, a friend of his because they did the soundtrack for Live and Die in LA and stuff like that. And it was after the interview I got back and I put it together and I started to really look into Wang Chung's history properly, like as in because I was building a web page for my website, which is coming out soon, and I actually realised what a big star he is. And it was kind of like, you know, I was just having a cup of tea with him, and he's this huge star. He was a huge star, you know, and he could not have been nicer. Sorry, but yeah, it's one of those weird things where normally it's Zoom, but I actually went to his house and sat with him and had a cup of tea and hopefully he's touring soon around our local area. So I said I'd go and see him and have a cup and have another cup of tea or a pint or something. And yeah, really, really cool.
That's cool. I love it. So guys, be sure to support the podcast. Check them out. Robbie, since I got you here, you know, we've got our Facebook page. There's, you know, plenty of members in the group. Feel free to plug your podcast anytime you want to.
Oh, thanks, bud.
Get in there, put an ad in for it. Just let, you know, we just want to support you and
thanks, man.
All you're doing there, and you know, get you a decent American audience over here.
Thank you. I mean, I'd appreciate if anyone listens and wants to say I liked it, I didn't like it. That's great. I take criticism of all kinds. You know what I mean, doesn't bother me.
All right, so this is the end of our podcast, and typically we go out with an outro song. So I know you're prepared.
Yeah.
What is our outro song for the day?
I don't think this was big in America. So it's an Australian pretending to be an Italian man, and the song was called "Shaddap You Face." Does it ring?
Oh, yes, I'm very familiar with that. It was there was a show called Dr. Demento,
right?
And Dr. Demento would play all these offbeat novelty tunes and things like that. And I remember Shaddap You Face. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I would imagine a lot of our audience have no idea what we are talking about right now, but they're about to, right?
It's crazy. He's Australian pretending to be Italian and singing about his Italian mum. It's the bizarrest. But it's got the best sing-along chorus you'll ever hear. So if you're first time listening to this track, you're welcome. And and secondly, I'm sorry as well.
Oh, great. So, hey, here is, and we're going to do this. We're going to shut up our faces and be out of here. So, you guys, thank you for everyone for listening. Robbie, thank you for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a blast for me, so I appreciate it. Guys, until next week, take care. God bless.
Hello, I'm Giuseppe. I got something special for you. Ready? Uno, due, tre, quattro. When I was a boy, just about the 8th grade, Mama used to say, don't stay out late with the bad boys. Always shoot the pool. Giuseppe going to flunk a school. Boy, it make me sick. All the thing I gotta do. I can't get no kicks. I always got to follow rules. Boy, it make me sick just to make the lousy bucks. Got to feel like a fool. And the mama used to say all the time, what's the matter you? Hey, gotta no respect. What do you think you do? Why you look so sad? It's not so bad. It's a nicer place. Ah, shut up your face. That's my mom, I can remember. Big accordion solo. Play that thing. Really nice, really nice. But soon there come a day, gonna be a bigger star. Then they make a TV shows and the movies. Get myself a new car, but still I be myself. I don't want it to change a thing. Still I dance and I sing. I think about the mama, she used to say, what's the matter you? Hey, God no respect. What do you think you do? Why you look so sad? It's not so bad. It's a nicer place. Ah, shut up your face. Mama, she said it all of the time. What's the matter you? Hey, God no respect. What do you think you do? Why you look so sad? It's not so bad. It's a nicer place. Ah, shut up your face. That's my mom. Hello everybody. That's out there on the radio and the TV land. Did you know I had a big hit the song in Italy with this? Shut up your face. I sing this song, all of my fans applaud, they clap their hands. But it's making me feel so good. You ought to learn this song, it's real simple. See, I sing, what's the matter you? You sing, hey. Then I sing the rest. And then at the end, we can all sing, ah, shut up your face. Okay, let's try it really. Uno, due, tre, quattro. What's the matter you? Hey, God no respect. Hey, what do you think you do? Hey, why you look so sad? Hey, it's not so bad. Hey, it's a nicer place. Ah, shut up your face. That's great. We can do the better this time. I bet. Hey, what's the matter you? Hey, God no respect. Hey, what do you think you do? Hey, why you look so sad? Hey, it's not so bad. Hey, it's a nicer place. Ah, shut up your face. Okay, one